13 spine-chilling midnight shift horrors revealed. Prepare for sinister sleep attacks that haunt. Amy's heart thudded against her ribs as she stepped into the cold, sterile entrance of Willow Creek Hospital. It was well past midnight, and the eerie silence of the dimly lit hallways felt alive, filled with the whispers of restless spirits, ghostly echoes reminding her that nothing was ever truly quiet here. She glanced down at her phone. 2 missed calls from home. Her kids were sleeping, and they needed her. She had to keep it together, but the nerves twisted in her gut. There was something unsettling about tonight. The beeping of machines, normally so reassuring, now sounded like a countdown of her sanity. A shiver ran down her spine as she walked past room 203, where shadows seemed to pulse like living things. She could almost hear the faint whimpering of a patient hidden within. It clawed at her reasoning. She hurried past, adrenaline kicking in. Something about the hospital felt wrong. As her shift dragged on, hushed voices echoed from the forsaken corners of the building. They danced on the edge of her consciousness, fragmented phrases that felt somehow familiar and yet jarringly foreign. The night shadowed by rumors, whispers of the Wilkins family who vanished, leaving behind a trail of dark secrets, and hushed accusations of rituals gone awry. In a town where everyone knew each other, Amy began to wonder just how well she knew her neighbors. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The air felt heavy, stifling even the slightest thought of comfort. Then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. An unknown number. Curiosity drew her in, but she recoiled at the first message. He sees you, all of you. Her blood ran cold. Forgotten secrets unraveled before her eyes, training schedules, her careless gossip at parties. How could someone know? She scrolled further down, her breath becoming shallow as she recognized more uncomfortable truths. Then the bottom dropped out of her gut when she learned her night shift coworkers had gone missing. One by one, their empty views haunted her as she glanced around the sterile floors, analyzing every face lurking behind the fluorescent lights. The walls felt like they were closing in, and when she approached the frazzled charge nurse, her voice trembled, barely breaking the eerie stillness. But the nurse shrugged, dismissing Amy's concerns as fatigue. Frustration boiled over, but the oppressive atmosphere snuffed out her bravery. Each tick of the clock amplified the fear and whispers of shadows, beckoning her deeper into the bowels of the hospital. With trembling hands, she pushed through a rusted door she'd never noticed before. Inside, the forgotten ward crawled with grime. Every step revealed an unsettling truth: patients discarded, reduced to whispers and shadows within the medical maze. And then she got another text. I'm right behind you. Her heart raced, and she swiveled, dread pooling in her stomach. A figure took shape in the doorway, shrouded in darkness. In that moment, clarity pierced through the chaos. This was just a supernatural tale spun from fear. The predator was real and lurking close to home. What had she unleashed in this quiet town? Amy's pulse thundered in her ears. She couldn't breathe, suffocated by the weight of the looming figure. The darkness was thick, smothering all light as it encroached upon her, just feet away. With reflexes honed by years of nursing, she spun on her heels, adrenaline fueling her flight as she sprinted down the corridor. Each echoing footfall was a reminder that something sinister was close behind. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting eerie shadows that flickered across the walls. She risked a glance back, but the figure had vanished, swallowed by the gloom. Her hands trembled, the phone still clutched tightly, the screen illuminating her frantic face. Call 911, she gasped, but the screen showed no service. Panic enveloped her like a fog. The oppressive atmosphere pushed in on her as she navigated through familiar halls that now felt alien and twisted. The nursing station was her beacon, the dwindling hope of safety, but as she rounded the corner, it was emptier than before. No nurses, no chatter. Just silence, heavy and suffocating. She approached the desk slowly, glancing at the abandoned coffee cups and half-filled charts. Then the eeriest sound emerged. A soft, sing-song voice floated through the air, breaking the stillness. "Where are you, Amy? Come and play." Chills cascaded down her spine, a primal dread urging her to flee. She stood frozen in place until she spotted a flickering light in the corner. Half a room was cloaked in shadows, an old break room where the fluorescent bulb dimmed unpredictably. She inched closer, drawn by a morbid curiosity despite the terror gnawing at her gut. The break room was a time capsule, untouched throughout the years, with old magazines and a cracked coffee pot sitting abandoned. A sense of dread mixed with longing twisted her heart. She was pained by the thought of her kids at home, wondering why their mother hadn't returned. Closing her eyes, she envisioned their faces, their laughter ringing in her ears, anchoring her to sanity. Suddenly, she heard a low, guttural growl from the hallway behind her, pulsating like a beast awakening from slumber. Amy's gut twisted. "This isn't happening," she whispered, shaking her head and turning toward the exit. But before she could move, the shadowy apparition formed at the doorway, an outline emerging from the enveloping darkness. It was a twisted parody of a familiar face. She recognized those features, one of her missing co-workers. "Amy, help us." The voice was choked, pained. But something in its eyes, a haunting emptiness, made her stomach lurch. She stumbled backward, heart racing, wanting to scream, but fear clamped down her throat. This wasn't the face of someone who needed help. It was a vessel for something darker. The creature reached out, fingers curling as it beckoned her closer. "No!" she spluttered, retreating further, and collided with the cold metal of the vending machine. "Get away!" The figure swayed, shivering as its form changed before her eyes, blurring in and out like a faulty broadcast. Amy wanted to run again, but the thing in front of her was holding her hostage, both fascinated and terrified. Desperate, she twisted her phone to snap a picture, but in that moment of distraction, the figure lunged, arms outstretched, as the lights flickered off, plunging her into darkness. Panic surged as she fumbled for the break room door, her fingers slipping on the cold handle. With a burst of energy, she wrenched it open and stumbled into the hallway, but her breath hitched in her throat. "Where do you think you're going?" The sinister voice slithered through the air, a taunt echoing off the walls. With no clear escape, she darted towards the stairwell, praying for a way out, but dread clawed at her back. Was it already too late? As she burst through the door into the stairwell, the overwhelming smell of decay flooded her senses. The walls groaned around her, as if the building itself was alive and aware. She could hear footsteps now shadowy, whispering, relentless. Desperation clawed at her mind. What had awakened in Willow Creek? But as she descended into the unknown, one thought terrified her more than the rest. Would she find her way back to her children or become a whisper in the hospital's forgotten halls? The darkness called to her, and the whispers grew louder. As she reached the bottom, something heavy clattered above her. "What now?" she thought, dread pooling in her stomach. The door at the bottom swung open with a creak, revealing a dimly lit hallway stretching far beyond her vision. In that moment, she sensed an answer to an unasked question. What had she unleashed? She took a step into the shadows, heart pounding, knowing her nightmare was just beginning. The hallway unfolded before her like the gaping maw of a beast. Each heartbeat felt thunderous, reverberating in her chest as the shadows loomed closer. The air was frigid, touching her skin like icy fingers, and the distant echoes of footsteps were no longer just behind her, they were all around. Whispered warnings twisted through the air, drowning her in despair. "Amy," the voice resonated, smothering her senses. It was everywhere and nowhere, a disembodied chant wrapping around her mind like a vine. "Where are you? No more games." She had to focus. She pressed forward, eyes darting, searching for an escape route. The floor creaked beneath her hurried steps, shifting in rhythm with her pounding heart. Shadows danced along the walls as the flickering lights above threatened to extinguish completely. In that moment, she felt time slipping away, each second stretching into infinity, as the darkness tightened its grip. Then she spotted a flicker of movement just ahead. A doorway, cracked open, spilling a sliver of light into the abyss. Hope surged within her, but it was eclipsed by an all-consuming fear. She hesitated, fingers trembling as she grasped the doorframe. Resonating from inside the room came the chilling sound of laughter, a high-pitched, twisted laughter that made her skin crawl. "Enter if you dare," the voice taunted, bubbling with malice. She choked back a scream. It was a sick game, and she didn't want to play. Yet she felt the pull of curiosity and terror intermingled, moving her to turn the knob and peep inside. The room was a random collection of hospital supplies, empty beds, scattered instruments, and 4 stands tipped over like soldiers fallen in battle. In the center lay a figure, motionless, the bright light of the room casting stark shadows across its face. A mask? No, it was more than that. It was someone she recognized. Sarah, a nurse who had worked on her floor. "Sarah?" Amy's voice came out a trembling whisper, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, a gurgling sound emanated from her throat, and then the thing curled itself into a horrific imitation of laughter again. "You shouldn't have come here," Amy staggered back, dread pooling in her gut, realizing the truth that loomed over her like a specter. These weren't just sinister apparitions. They were the remnants of those who had entered the darkness before, now caught in its web. Their twisted forms were echoes of the lives stolen away. She spun around, ready to bolt, but the door slammed shut. Trapped. The room felt alive and suffocating. The shadows stretched and crept closer, encasing her in a cocoon of despair. Racing thoughts suffocated her. What kind of force was this? Would she become the next ghost haunting these halls, calling for help that would never reach anyone? "Let her play," the voice came again, sharp and sinister, as though it were a single entity laughing at her fear. The lights flickered off completely. A smothering darkness enveloped her. Amy's pulse quickened. Panic now surged through her veins like fire. "No! I won't let it take me!" She dashed forward, hands searching blindly for the door again, desperation giving her strength. But the sound of footsteps surrounded her, echoing endlessly. The mocking laughter swirled around her like smoke, taunting her, wrapping tight, stealing any hope of escape. "Join us," she felt a presence behind her. Cool breath brushed against her neck, chilling her to the bone as she struggled against the growing hopelessness. Then, just when it seemed all was lost, the lights flickered back to life. Through the haze of confusion and fear, Amy saw an almost tangible path forming in the light. The door was ajar again. She sprinted, heart racing, breath hitching as she reached for it. But as her fingers grazed the cold handle, a scream erupted from behind, paralyzing her. "Don't go, Amy! Stay and play!" The finality of the voice clawed at her mind just as she yanked open the door. "Get out! Get out!" she screamed, bursting onto the threshold, but the darkness was hot on her heels. Would she escape the nightmare? Would she ever see her children again? Or would she be forever consumed by the shadows, lost in the whispers that filled the hallways of this damned hospital? As she stumbled into the next corridor, breathless and on the verge of collapse, she heard faint whispers of her name trailing behind her, but were they calling her back or luring her deeper into the darkness? The corridor stretched endlessly, gnawing at her sanity with every step. Amy's heart raced as she fled into the narrowing chasm, shadows clawing at her heels. The whispers grew louder, piercing her mind, smothering her thoughts. Voices echoed, a distorted choir chanting her name, reverberating off the cold, sterile tiles. "Amy, come play," she shook her head, trying to drown the sounds. Her hands trembled at her sides, desperate for something to hold on to. The stench of decay seeped into her nostrils, thick and oppressive, like an ancient curse lurking just beneath her skin. The flickering fluorescent lights buzzed angrily overhead, their weak illumination revealing dark stains on the walls, symbols drawn in the despair of those who'd given up long ago. She felt the sweat trickle down her back, clinging her clothes to her like a second skin. Turning a corner, she spotted another door at the end of the hall, wood-worn and warped. It was ajar, a soft light spilling out like a beckoning hand. Hope flickered within her again, battling the rising tide of dread. "Amy, don't you want to know what's inside?" She gulped down fear and pressed forward. With every step, a creeping nausea clawed at her insides. This couldn't be real, could it? She pushed the door open wider. Inside, the room was cluttered with gurneys and old medical equipment, but more chilling than its contents were the photographs lining the walls. Faces she recognized, muffled screams in ice-perfect clarity. Nurses, patients, families, each one twisted in agony, caught in grotesque smiles. Their eyes seemed to follow her, pleading for her to understand something she couldn't grasp. All at once, the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. Amy's body jolted from the sudden noise, heart pounding like a war drum. Sweat cascaded down her forehead. She rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged. "Get me out! Please! Stay, Amy! Stay forever!" The laughter blossomed again, a sinister melody wrapping around her, penetrating her thoughts. She spun around, breath hitching in her throat as something moved in the shadows, something large and menacing lurking beyond the veil of darkness. Suddenly, a reflection caught her eye. In the corner of the room, an old mirror stood, its surface clouded and cracked. But within its depths, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a familiar shape, dressed in scrubs and a mask. Sarah? The figure twisted with sickening speed, lifting its eyes, those hollow, lifeless voids that once held compassion, now brimming with malevolence. "Why did you leave me, Amy?" She stumbled back, biting back a scream. "You're not Sarah. You're something else." The shadowy figure laughed, and the sound echoed, multiplied, until it filled the room with chaos. Amy's heart leaped, propelling her into motion. She turned, launching herself at the door, slamming into it with all her weight. Nothing. The door remained locked, steadfast. A chill breath ghosted around her, swirling like icy tendrils. The laughter grew louder, turning into a cacophony of familiar voices, all twisted and distorted. Their pleas for help warped into a symphony of despair. "Leave or stay, join us, Amy, where do you belong?" With every confession of sorrow, Amy felt something slipping away, lost in the storm of voices clamoring for her attention, pulling her deeper. Her memories a kaleidoscope of her children's laughter, the warmth of home began to fade like mist in the sun. "No! I want to lose them!" The whispered promises of darkness, the glimmering false hope of camaraderie began to suffocate her. She dropped to her knees, hands pressed against her ears, trying to block out the darkness closing in. Then, that familiar icy breath grazed the back of her neck. She froze. Or was it still there? The shadows thickened, swirling, morphing into vision, screams, tears, and laughter, all melding into one dissonant haze. Let the game begin. With a surge of adrenaline, Amy pushed up, desperate to find a way out before the darkness claimed her completely. Behind the mirror, she noticed a door. Hidden in the shadows. Hope flickered once more. But as she moved toward it, the whispers transformed into a chant, a terrifying rhythm that echoed louder and louder. She grasped the handle, swinging it open. What lay beyond the answers or more horrors? With only a heartbeat left, she stepped inside. What awaited her now could change everything. Would the path lead to freedom, or draw her deeper into the abyss? The door swung open with a creak that seemed to announce her arrival to the unknown. Amy stepped through the threshold, heart pounding. The space beyond felt different, cooler, dimmer. It smelled metallic, a sharp tang that stung her nostrils, like blood. Her instincts screamed danger, but she pressed on, driven by the flickering hope of escape. The room was a mirrored echo of the last, yet it felt alive. The walls pulsed softly, a heartbeat thumping beneath the surface. Shadows writhed, moving in ways they shouldn't, always just out of reach. She huddled into the corners, her breath quickening as she ventured deeper. "Welcome to our sanctuary, Amy," a voice crooned from the darkness, dripping with faux comfort. A figure emerged, half illuminated by an eerie light. It wore a hospital gown, ragged and stained, almost spectral, drifting towards her like a wisp of smoke. "We've been waiting for you." Terror washed over her. "Who are you? What do you want?" She felt small, insignificant, like prey backed into a corner. The apparition smiled, but it was the kind of smile that twisted her stomach. "Don't you remember me?" I'm just like you. There was a flicker, and images flooded her mind: an emergency room, the chaos of doctors and nurses, her own cries drowned out by medical jargon. The apparition leaned closer, its features sharp and unsettling. You didn't save me. You walked away. No, I tried. Amy's voice was frantic, desperation twisting her words. I tried to help you. Help? Or save your own skin? It laughed softly, mockingly. Its eyes glimmered with malice, a reflection of the pain that echoed through the shadows they inhabited. The room began to shift again. Walls morphed, pulsating like a living organism around her, and suddenly confining her within suffocating darkness. Amy stumbled backward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Panic clawed at her. She was trapped in a maze of forgotten souls, drawn to their desolation. Leave or stay? The whispers began anew, a disorienting chant rising and falling. Join us, we have nothing but time. Their tones warped, echoing through her mind, planting seeds of doubt. Would it be better to surrender? To give in, hide among the tormented? No! She screamed, clutching her head. It felt like the walls were closing in on her, smothering hope in the growing darkness. She turned, desperate to find a path, only to find that the way she came had vanished, swallowed by the throes of the restless night. But then, amid the rising tide of despair, a flicker of light danced in the far corner. Drawn to it like a moth, she picked her way painstakingly through the stifling shadows, forcing one foot before the other. The light glimmered with promises of warmth, a refuge from the horrors surrounding her. Getting closer, she could see it was another door, but not just any door. It was exquisitely carved, adorned with intricate patterns. It pulsed almost with life, inviting her in. A soft glow slipped beneath the crack at its base. Amy, let us take you home, the disembodied voices whispered, their comfort tinged with deceit. Was this a lead to salvation, or another trap? Her heart pounded furiously, begging her to choose wisely. With shaking hands, she grasped the handle, a mere heartbeat away from unraveling the next layer of this nightmare. Stay with us or leave this madness behind. What awaited her on the other side? Only the echoes of her choices lingered, the weight of her next step pushing her precariously to the edge of decision. As she turned the handle, shadows danced at her back, waiting to see if she would embrace them as her own. And then she opened the door. What lay ahead? A doorway to freedom or another descent into darkness? The door swung open slowly, revealing a passageway bathed in cold, bluish light. The air felt thin, weighed down by an unshakable dread. Amy took a tentative step inside, her senses screaming at her to turn back. The echoes of the voices followed her, like shadows lurking just behind her. They hung greedily, whispering fragmented promises of comfort that twisted into threats. Make a choice, Amy, they hissed, now chanting as if part of a sickening chorus. Join us or be alone. She crept further into the corridor, each footfall reverberating against the damp walls. The floor felt slick beneath her shoes, a feeling of wetness that betrayed a deeper story hidden within the dark. She squinted, trying to pierce the gloom ahead, but saw only flickering shadows dancing against the walls, moving as if they had minds of their own. A sudden noise broke the sickening silence. A soft sobbing echoed through the corridor, drawing her like a moth to flame. The sound was pitiful, a call for help that clawed at her heart. Had someone else been trapped in this nightmare? The thought alone sent a chill racing down her spine. Please, it was a woman's voice, raw and desperate. Help me, there's no time. Driven by an urge to assist, Amy hesitated only a moment before pressing forward. Each step felt heavier, laden with dread. Her senses heightened, heart pounding like a war drum. Don't be fooled, a whisper slithered past her, knotting in her stomach. You'll only find suffering. Ignoring the warning, she continued, hoping to find the source of the cries. The corridor twisted like a serpent, each turn more treacherous. Dim lights flickered above, casting long, creeping shadows that seemed to reach for her, eager to pull her back into the dark embrace. And then she spotted it, a figure hunched against the wall, shrouded in darkness. The sobbing ceased abruptly as she approached, and an icy silence fell. The figure turned, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Panic tightened Amy's throat, What she saw there sent a shockwave of familiarity crashing through her mind. Emma? She gasped, recognizing the face of a long-lost friend, the vibrant girl she once tried to save but never made it in time. How could this be real? Why did you come here? Emma's voice was hollow, barely a whisper. You should have forgotten. We all did. I thought I could help. Amy cried, desperation rising anew. I thought you needed me. Emma drew back, eyes wide and terrified. You're wrong. This place, it's not what you think. They feed on your hope, Amy. Turn back. Before she could respond, the shadows behind Emma began to writhe and twist. Dark silhouettes emerged, seeping from the walls, their forms shifting and contorting. The cries of the forgotten echoed, rising like a tortured symphony. We are waiting! The voices called, merging into a cacophony that reverberated through the air. Come back to us! Terror flooded Amy's heart. The shadows lunged forward, reaching for her with cold, skeletal fingers. She stumbled backward, gasping, uncertainty paralyzing her. Don't let them take you! Emma screamed, the ghostly form quaking with the intensity of her warning. It's the only way! With her heart racing, Amy turned, racing back toward the door she had entered, desperate to escape. Darkness swirled around her, hungry and insistent. The walls seemed to pulse, constricting her path as the tormented spirits wailed and howled. But as the door drew close, she noticed something shift. A darkness far deeper than the rest surged beneath her, wrapping around her feet like icy tendrils. It's too late, the whisper floated through her head, a soft caress followed by a knife-sharp blade of truth. Just as she reached for the door, the shadows erupted in a furious burst, flinging her against the wall. Pain shot through her body. The world spun, and she realized she was not alone in this fight. As she struggled to her feet, she noticed her own reflection glimmer and a nearby shard of glass embedded in the wall, a reflection that distorted, twisting into a malevolent smile. Stay or embrace the shadows. With a ragged breath, Amy turned to face the approaching figure, her heart racing faster than ever. She had to make a choice, but what if all paths led to despair? What awaited her now? Could she find her way back to the door, or was she destined to dance with the shadows forever? A shrill laugh echoed through the corridor, and as it resonated, the walls began to close in around her. What would she decide? Time was running out. They were everywhere. The shadows erupted around Amy, morphing into a frenzy of twisted faces and reaching limbs. Each ghostly scream clawed at her mind, drowning her thoughts in a tide of despair. They weren't just shadows. They were memories, each one dragging her deeper into a pit of broken hopes and lost dreams. Join us, the voices hissed, enticing her with the promise of reunion. It's easier to give in. Amy's heart thundered in her chest. The urge to flee battled against the warmth of familiarity pulling her toward them. She couldn't ignore Emma's warning, yet every fabric of her being ached for connection. Fight it! She screamed at herself, her own voice barely breaking through the cacophony. With every inch she gained toward the door, the shadows lunged closer. The air thickened, an oppressive weight suffocating her resolve. Her thoughts spiraled. What if Emma's right? What if this place? A glimpse of a memory rippled through her mind, weaving images of laughter and warmth. The time before loss and regret filled her vision. Amy, don't abandon me! Emma cried, her eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. The intensity of Emma's fear hit her like a sledgehammer. Amy's resolve began to crack, and she felt herself inch closer to accepting the darkness. Would reuniting with lost souls truly mean leaving her humanity behind? No! I refuse. The words erupted from her lips, fueled by desperation. But the shadows sensed her defiance. They surged forward with renewed ferocity, coiling around her legs, yanking her to the ground. Amy's body slammed against the cold, wet floor, a shock of pain shooting through her limbs. She grimaced, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Please! She cried out, feeling the icy slog of despair creep further into her soul. I'm not ready! As she struggled to break free from their grip, something tugged at her memory. A fleeting notion flickered, a memory of strength. A long-lost mantra echoed, "You have the power!" She pushed against the wave of shadows, forcing her will to surge like a beacon. "I am more than this." The shadows hesitated, their grip faltering. For a split second, the faces dimmed, allowing Amy a glimpse of freedom at the door. The flickering lights above illuminated the corridor, revealing an exit bathed in radiant brightness, a stark contrast to the dark. "Run!" Emma's voice urged, echoing with desperation and hope. With renewed determination, Amy fought against the pull. She ripped herself free, launching towards the door. The shadows screeched, their cries melding into a haunting wail, but she would not look back. Every step burned beneath her as she sprinted, the cold nipping at her heels. She could feel the shadows clawing at her, grasping for her clothes, her skin, her very essence. The whispers now transformed into agonized shrieks, a symphony of tortured souls desperate to drag her back down. "Don't leave us!" they pleaded. "Be one of us!" But all Amy heard was the pulsing beat of her heart, urging her on. Each footfall felt like a victory, every fleeting glimpse of light breaking the suffocating darkness. She reached for the door handle, hand trembling, heart racing with the electric buzz of adrenaline. How much did she want this? Was she strong enough to resist completely, or would she always feel that draw? The door swung open, revealing the world outside. Sunlight poured in, warm and golden, offering a promise of warmth. She could feel it, almost taste freedom, but the shadows lurked just behind her. "What will it be?" echoed a voice, deep and resonant, circling around her like a serpent. Amy froze, heart captured between two worlds. Stay in the light, or plunge back into the darkness? What will you decide? As she stood on the brink of choice, the shadows writhed, coalescing into a figure she recognized all too intimately, reaching out with hands that glimmered like fading starlight. "Join me," Amy embraced the darkness. Would she take the leap? Time was slipping through her fingers like sand. What awaited her just beyond the door? The choice wasn't over yet. The shadows twisted, forming the outline of a face she couldn't refuse. It was a face of grief and longing, eyes glimmering like dark gems in a sepulchre. "Amy," the figure whispered, beckoning her with a familiar rhythm that tugged at her heart like a haunting lullaby. The whispers grew louder, intertwining with her doubt. "You can find peace. You can be whole again." The shadows rushed at her, and for a terrible instant, it felt as if they were pulling her closer, promising comfort, promising release. "No!" Her voice broke, sharp and clear against the swirling mass. With a surge of energy, Amy threw herself through the door, slamming it shut behind her. She stumbled into the sunlight, gasping for air, lungs burning with fresh, free breaths. But the momentary reprieve was short-lived. As the soft, golden rays seemed to grow dimmer around her, she stood in a dilapidated hallway, peeling paint and broken tiles lining the floor. This wasn't the world she had stepped into. It was a reflection of the nightmare she had escaped. Shadows danced along the walls, whispering secrets only they understood. Panic fluttered in her chest. "Amy?" Emma's voice rang from somewhere within the depths of the building. "Are you okay?" "Emma?" Amy gasped, spinning around. "I'm here." But as her voice echoed, the familiar warmth of her friend felt distant. A thick fog swirled at her feet, pulling her backward, tempting her to retrace her steps. "Amy! You should be stayed. Come back!" The whispers morphed into a cacophony of cries haunting, desperate. The figure from before reappeared behind her, now looming in the shadow's embrace, features sharp and distorted. "Don't fight this. Come back to us and be free." A cold shiver slithered down Amy's spine. "No! I want tea!" Driven by dread, Amy dashed down the hallway, a sprint against the unknown. Doors lined each side, some ajar and others locked tight, too heavy with the weight of secrets. She yanked open one to find a stifling room filled with flickering candles, the air thick with the scent of wax and despair. In the corner, a mirror caught her eye, and she stumbled toward it. Her reflection warped, shadows clawed at her from the glass, their twisted faces mirroring every fracture within her soul. "You can't escape," they whispered, grinning grotesquely. "We are part of you. The room began to spin, walls bending and warping. She snapped away from the mirror, backpedaling, desperation fueling each frantic heartbeat. Emma? Where are you? But the dim hall was silent, empty like her heart. Suddenly, the shadows darkened, thickened, and the lights flickered ominously. A shrill laugh echoed through the corridor, frigid and taunting. We'll take what's ours. The voice slithered around her like smoke, enveloping her in its icy grip. Amy's heart raced as the shadows leapt forward. Quick! To the attic! It will be safe! Emma's voice pierced the gloom, guiding her intentions, pushing her toward the staircase at the end of the hall. Every step felt like a battle against invisible chains. She sprinted up the stairs, the laugh from below echoing, mocking. Run, Amy, run! But you cannot hide! Bursting into the attic, she slammed the door behind her. Breathing heavily, she scanned the dust-coated room, the dim light revealing remnants of forgotten lives. Old toys, broken frames, and faded memories told stories of abandonment and sorrow. But something glinted in the corner, a box, locked yet beckoning her. The shadows outside shimmied, pushing against the door. They wanted in. Heart pounding, Amy rushed to the box, fingers trembling. What is this? What do you want? I want you to choose. The figure cried from behind the door. You cannot evade your fate forever. Desperation clawed at her throat, but before she could think, she grasped the box's latch. It clicked open, and a cloud of smoke billowed from within, swirling around her like an ethereal shroud. And then silence. The weight of the final choice hung in the air, electric and chilling. The door shuddered under the pressure of hungry shadows. What have you done? As the smoke danced, a vision flickered to life before her, shadows looming ominously. It beckoned Amy closer with promises buried in the darkness. And that's when she realized she had opened more than just the box. Who are you really? She whispered, entranced as the vision grew clearer. The shadows quivered, eager to answer, reshaping into something that sent a jolt of pure terror through her. Something told her she was far from escaping. What had she unleashed? The smoke swirled, taking shape, and Amy's breath hitched in her throat. The shadows solidified into a ghastly figure, its face an eerie reflection of sorrow and despair. It weaved seamlessly from the black mist, eyes gleaming with malevolent intentions. Did you think you could escape us? The voice ricocheted in her mind like a nightmare revived. You pulled me from the depths. Now we are one. She staggered back, shock flooding her veins. No! I didn't mean to. It doesn't matter. The figure advanced, its form growing more defined, more horrific. The box gave me life. You chose this. Now let us uncover your truth. A gust of wind howled around the attic, carrying whispered secrets that snaked through her consciousness. Memories flooded in, stitched together by threads of fear. Moments of vulnerability, loss, and despair crushed her like an avalanche, clogging her thoughts. No! Leave me! She begged, pressing her palms against her ears, trying to block out the relentless tide of her past. Yet the laughter, sharp, cold, familiar, slithered into her mind, echoing like a warning siren. Here, in this place, shadows thrive, the figure continued, revealing a twisted smile. You thought you could hide? Look around. This is your sanctuary now. Amy's eyes darted around the attic, where old toys lay scattered like forgotten dreams, and frames hung, displaying smiles that felt long lost. The air nearly vibrated with their sorrow, mixing with her own dread. Images flashed before her, every secret, every regret, every time she felt alone. Is this what you wanted? Freedom, Amy? The shadows began dancing faster, swirling around her, pushing her into the corner. I can give you what you desire most, but at a price. What price? Her voice barely broke through the chaos. An exchange. The walls of the attic seemed to close in. She felt small and trapped, the glow of the outside world dimming against the weight of her choices. What do you mean? The figure reached out from the shadows, a glimmering, skeletal hand. You wish to be free of pain. I can take it away, Amy. All you need to do is surrender your fear and your soul. No! She recoiled, heart racing as realization struck. You want to consume me? Oh, my dear, it could. You already belong to me. I am the pain you refuse to acknowledge. A cold dread sunk deep in her chest. The shadows pulsed with life, hungry for her despair. She had awakened something ancient and dark, a force that thrived on the very essence of her soul. Amy! Emma's voice sliced through the heaviness, a lifeline breaking the suffocation of the shadows. Where are you? Hold on. Emma? Panic surged within her, pushing her away from the figure, dimming its influence. I'm here. The shadows writhed, angry at the interruption. She cannot save you. You must choose now. Join me, or vanish. With desperation coursing through her, she snatched the empty picture frame from the floor, holding it up as a shield. Get back! You're not taking me! The figure's face twisted in rage, the shadows recoiling momentarily. You think you can fight? It seethed. You are already trapped, and she will fall into this darkness just as you will. Air rippled with the clash of energy surging between them. Amy felt it pulse, pulling her toward the figure, but she fought against it. Something inside her sparked a flicker of hope fueled by her friend's voice. Amy, I'm coming. Emma's footsteps were louder now, bounding up the stairs. Then, as if in slow motion, the attic door rattled violently. The shadows tensed, and an overwhelming force surged against the door, splintering it slightly. No! Do not let her in! The figure shrieked. Amy! I'm right here! Emma cried again, urgency weaving through her words. Trapped between the encroaching darkness and the promise of safety, Amy stood at the precipice of her choice. Would she let the shadows consume her, or could she fight back in time to save them both? What did she truly want, freedom from her fear or freedom from the darkness? The shadows writhed, a tempest of hatred against the door. She couldn't hesitate. Emma? She shouted, desperate, resolute. Get ready! Ready for what? And whatever you do, don't look back. The answer lay steeped in terror, but in her heart, a single thought persisted. She couldn't allow the shadows to drag Emma into their abyss. Not without a fight. The walls of the attic trembled, the shadows closing in like a vice. But Amy was determined. Through the veil of darkness, something deep within her surged, forcing the whispering terror backward. What would happen next? Would there be a way to confront the monstrous truth? The air crackled with tension as Amy stood her ground, heart racing, eyes narrowing at the encroaching darkness. She felt the heat of the shadows wrap around her ankles like serpents, but she resolved to break free. Emma? She shouted, her voice cutting through the oppressive dread. Start running! We'll find a way out. But the darkness screeched in retaliation, a swirling cacophony of voices clamoring for her despair. Join us, it's too late to escape. The shadows twisted, shifting and writhing like serpents, and the visage of the figure loomed large, contorted with rage and hunger. Hold on tight, Amy! Emma shouted as she burst through the broken door, eyes wide with urgency. In that instant, the darkness quaked, trembling at the reality of being confronted. Let us go! Determined, the two women held on to each other tightly, their combined strength igniting a spark of defiance. Together, they inched toward the flickering light of the attic window, where the weight of the night pressed down on them. It felt as if they were pushing against a beast intent on pulling them into its belly. Not this time! Amy shouted. She felt warm tears streaking her face, clarity piercing through the haze of fear. In her chest, the echo of hope surged louder than ever. The figure shrieked, You can't escape what you are. Maybe not, Amy cried back, but I can choose who I want to be. With that, she turned to the window. The night outside beckoned, a glimmer of possibility amidst the shadows. On the count of 3, 1, 2, go! They leaped toward the glow, crashing through the frame in a burst of light and energy. For a moment, everything froze. And then they were falling upward into the sky, into the sun's golden embrace. It felt liberating and terrifying. But then, something miraculous happened. As soon as they broke through the canopy of darkness, the shadows wailed behind them, and the shrieks began to dissipate into the ether. They were falling in slow motion, their bodies enveloped in a shimmering light reflected glimmers of their lives lived fully. Amy gasped as they landed softly, stepping onto solid ground, the warmth of the sun wrapping around them like a long-lost embrace. For a split second, they lingered in that moment, their breaths synchronized a breath of freedom. But the shadows twisted, clawing at the light lingering behind them. The figure's enraged visage morphed into a howl of despair. "No! You belong to me. You must return." It reached for them, insatiable in its hunger. "Not today!" Emma shouted, her voice fierce as the truth surged within them. "We reclaim our lives." With that declaration, the light glimmered brighter, a protective barrier enveloping them, warding off the reaching tendrils of darkness. They began to walk away hand in hand, a united front, even as the shadows raged and pulsed with fury. "Remember who we are," Amy whispered, locking eyes with Emma. "We are not just shadows." "Yes," Emma agreed, her voice strong. "We are more than our fears." The light shimmered brighter, and the shadows shrank back, dissipating like mist in the morning sun, suffocated by the overwhelming power of their combined resolve. They were victorious, emerging into the world liberated from that haunting terror. With every step away from the hospital, Amy felt the weight lift from her soul. They passed through the front entrance, stepping outside into a vibrant morning filled with birds singing and people bustling about, oblivious to the darkness that lurked only moments before. For the first time in what felt like eons, Amy took a deep breath of fresh air, filled with life and possibility. The experience flashed vividly through her mind, the faces, the cries, the darkness, but also hope, friendship, and strength. "Mom?" The sound of a familiar voice broke through her thoughts. Amy turned, heart soaring at the sight of her two children running toward her, arms outstretched. "Mommy!" they cried, enveloping her in warmth and love, grounding her back in reality. Tears of joy mingled with the remnants of fear that filled her eyes. "I'm so sorry I worried you," she breathed, desperately hugging them close, feeling their heartbeats sync with her own. The shadows were behind her, gone, while the sun continued to rise. Life was waiting ahead. Emma stepped back with a smile, silently acknowledging their shared strength, a bond forged in darkness that would never fade. "Let us go home," Amy said, gathering her children close. Her resolve felt solid again, and she knew they had faced the worst. But a lingering notion followed. What about others? She pondered quietly, glancing back at the hospital, the depths of melancholy echoing in her heart. "We carry their memory now," Emma said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "We can tell their story and fight for those who can't." And with that they walked forward together, the shadows finally falling behind, their path a testament to resilience, love, and above all, the choices they made in the face of darkness. Amy took a deep breath, and for the first time, she felt completely free, with everyone she loved beside her. And in that moment she vowed to a brighter future, leaving the haunting whispers behind where they belong. Now, this is your chance to be part of the journey. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your love. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Your support is what keeps the magic alive.